So 100 Thieves have emerged as the team to beat in the VCT Americas, and they're doing a lot of their work primarily off of their bind. We can see here this is from the beginning of the year, they're 7-2 on bind. And I wanted to go into the stats a little bit just for a moment because there's some interesting stuff here. So if we go through some of the VCT leagues this year, we can see that bind in Pacific was played 14 times with a 50-50 attack and defenders sided win rate. If we go to the Americas, bind was played 15 times with a 52% attack win rate, 48% defense. China was 17 times on bind with 53% attack sided win rate. And in EMEA, bind was played 14 times with a 55% attack sided win rate in stage number 1. Now, if we go back to the 100 Thieves bind, we can see that their attack side win rate is 58%, so it's a little bit above average, but their defensive side win rate is 61%, which is way higher than league average, global average, and much higher than most other teams on this map. And then we go back into the agent pools that were played on bind. It's pretty telling. So in Pacific on bind, we had a 75% pick rate for Viper, 100% pick rate for Raze, 61% pick rate for Gecko, 75% for Sky. And then if we go to the Americas, it's kind of the same story. We've got 100% for Viper, 97% for Raze, Gecko's up there with 70%, Sky 60%, Brim 100%, and then we've got some Fade, we've got some KO, we've got some Cypher. Now this Fade pick rate at 27% is almost entirely 100 Thieves, and we can go and look at the actual bind comps that were played. The only other team in the Americas that played Fade on bind was G2, and that was one time here at the very end. The rest of the league is playing other stuff, and most of the teams are playing Sky and Gecko. That's sort of been like the standard direction that we've gone. And obviously this is super relevant because in the past, bind was a map where you just played the Sky solo, but the Sky nerfs made it much less effective to do that. And so teams have been kind of struggling to figure out what the meta is on this map for the entire season, basically, since the Sky nerfs happened. So again, if we look at China, 82% Sky, 65% Gecko, and quite a bit of Cypher, some Omen, some KO, 3% Fade. EMEA, we have a 0% Fade pick rate on bind. Sky, Gecko kind of being the primaries, a little bit of Breach, actually a decent amount of KO on bind. There's a general meta trend that's happening, and it's just that because Sky is hard to play as a solo initiator now, because the flashes don't regenerate over time, you kind of need that secondary initiator, which has been the Gecko almost by default. And the Sky Gecko combo has taken up a huge majority of the meta share. And we have a trend towards being more attack-sided on the map, which makes sense because now that you don't have the regenerative flashes from Sky and Gecko's in the mix, these are all kind of like aggressive agents slanted towards being aggressive. So it makes sense that the attack would be winning more. When we have all these trends headed towards the direction of this is now an attack-side map, people are playing sort of attack-side comps, and then we have one team that is playing a slightly different comp, right? And they're playing it enough to the point where it's actually getting a decent share of the overall meta in their region. I wanted to look at this comp, and then I wanted to actually kind of look at the 100 Thieves defensive side and explain what is making them so good. Why are they sort of the only ones that seem to have figured out how to play this map? Because they are far and away the best bind team in the Americas, and probably in the world at this point. So it might be kind of surprising that one agent would make such a big deal, but I kind of want to talk about why I think that this Fade really is sort of the key, at least one of the keys to why 100 Thieves is finding so much success. So when we look at Sky gives us a few things. Sky gives us some information due to the flashes and the seekers and the dog. Gives us some execute power thanks to the flashes and the seekers and the dog, and then is basically just kind of like a supportive agent that you can put over here on B long to get information, and then you can help your teammates at A with some utility through the teleporter. And this is kind of how Sky was played like all of 2023 and also kind of into the beginning of this year. But because this flash that used to be thrown here for information immediately now has less value, because if they just hide from the flash and then it doesn't get anything, then all of a sudden you're down a flash and you have no information. People have been trying to figure out kind of like how to deal with this. So one of the solutions is that we now have a gecko that plays over here and, you know, throws a dizzy up over this wall to check for information here and there, because you can reuse the dizzy over and over. Or sometimes you just have somebody kind of like jump peeking this or something like that. What the fade does is fade kind of does the same things that you're wanting from a sky. Obviously there's no flashes on fade, but you do have execute power, because as you go in, you can throw your haunt. A reveal is very, very powerful and oftentimes better than flashes, especially when there's lots of smokes on a site, because you can see over stuff if you get it on top of a roof. It's more reliable in terms of, you know, like there is somebody here or there isn't somebody here. And then just like Sky's Trailblazer being able to lead the way through sort of these big choke points, Fade can do the same thing with the Prowler, and Fade can kind of match on the other side of things, on the defensive side of things. Fade can kind of match Sky's utility, but tends to have almost more of it because of this sort of focus on recon and information over execute power. So what I mean by that is, if you get a Trailblazer from the attackers coming up B long, Fade can kind of just immediately throw a Prowler and counter it. You know, is there somebody actually following the dog up? If not, then cool, we've gotten our information and we can rotate off. And just like the Sky Flash used to be used to check whether people were outside of showers or outside of B long, the Fade Eye can do the same thing, except for the Fade Eye actually regenerates. So now we have two regenerative informational tools, whether we have Fade on A or Fade on B. If we have the Gecko and the Fade, the Dizzy can check B long, the Fade can check outside of showers, and both of these pieces of information can then be used later on the round because they both are regenerative. So that is one big thing that the Fade brings to the table that the Sky is lacking now, is that you can actually check outside of both extremities with the Sky, or with the Gecko and Fade comp. And with the Sky Gecko comp, it's a lot more of a hard commitment to check whether there is somebody outside of both extremities. Now, what really pushes it over the edge, in my opinion, is that Fade has the ability Seize. And Seize is a great combo tool when you have other damage dealing utility to kind of stack on top of it. Seize is good with Brimstone's Molly. Seize is good with Brimstone's Ultimate. Seize is good with Gecko's Molly. Seize is good with Viper's Molly. And Seize is good with Raze's Grenade. So this might be pretty close to the optimal lineup to run a Fade with if you want to maximize the value that you get from Seize. And because Bind is a map that really kind of focuses on the attack funneling through a very, very small choke point in every single case when they hit a site, whether it's coming through B long, whether it's coming through hookah, whether it's coming through A short, whether it's coming through showers, all of these choke points are very small, and they're basically the perfect size for a Seize to land and completely disrupt the attackers if timed at the right time, and especially if you're able to combo this with a Raze Grenade or a Brimstone Ultimate or a Mosh Pit from the Gecko. So the Seize has a massive amount of value, a massive amount of stopping power, makes it very dangerous to just kind of try and execute, because if you don't know where the Fade is there, she can absolutely ruin your attack side hit. So basically, in summary, I think by simply switching the Fade for the Sky, 100 Thieves has gotten a comp that combos well together internally much better and doesn't lose really any attack power, because the Fade has plenty of sort of entry by proxy tools and execute power to help the Raze and the Gecko and everybody go in, just like the Sky does, and also gives you a little bit of extra regenerative informational tools on the defensive side so that you can do a better job kind of defaulting and figuring out where the attackers are to get your rotations in the right spot.